Let me tell you why I love Rudy Sarzo and Brian Howard. And this story is crazy, but it's true. When I was in high school, Whitesnake dominated MTV, radio. Whitesnake was the biggest band on the planet, and they were doing a sold-out arena tour across the country, across the world. And they get to Tucson, and a buddy of mine that I went to high school with said, dude, you know my sister works at this big resort in Tucson. Whitesnake is there today. They have a day off, and they're just hanging out at that resort. And I had my mom drop me off at this. I know this is creepy. This is very creepy. But my mom dropped me off at the resort so I could just walk around and try to see if I could find Whitesnake. Again, I'm a kid, all right? I'm a teenager. And I see Rudy Sarzo. This makes me cringe so much to think about this. Rudy Sarzo's hanging out at the pool, and I walk up to him as a teenager, and I go, Rudy, my name's Craig Gass, and I'm just wanted to say hello. I'm a big fan of yours. And Rudy was so nice that he just hung out with me for at least an hour. I remember it being a couple hours. I couldn't believe how effortless the conversation was. I look back at it now, and it really, really, really makes me cringe because I think about in that context as an adult, if somebody walked up to me at a hotel, say, hey, I just want to hang out and talk to you. But he was so nice that at one point, as I was walking away, Rudy says to me, hey, do you have a car? I lied to him and said, yeah, what do you need? And he goes, well, I need to go shopping tomorrow. This tour is about to end. And one of the guys in my band, Adrian, and we want to go shopping for comforters and sheets. So I found a place that's nearby that has great comforters and sheets. Can you drive me over there? And then I'll hook you up with tickets and backstage passes to the show. And I said, yeah, no problem. What time do you want me to come in here? And he said, like 12, 1 o'clock tomorrow. And I go, absolutely. I have my mom come pick me up again. And then I go to high school the next day, running down Senior Hall saying, who wants to drive Whitesnake to go shopping? Who wants to take Whitesnake shopping? Does anybody want to take Whitesnake shopping? My friend Brian, smoothest, coolest, chill guy, says to me, I don't even like Whitesnake. I'll take them shopping. Where do they want to go? And I go, well, I want to take them to the mall is what I want to do, but they want to go to some boutique shop. The plan was, let's get Whitesnake in a car and take them to the Tucson Mall, because the Tucson Mall is where all of our friends hung out at. And I want to walk around the mall with Whitesnake. And this is like Still of the Night is huge. Is This Love? All these Whitesnake songs with Tawny Katane dancing on the cars and everything. This is like the peak of Whitesnake. And they have a sold out show in Tucson, Arizona. And Brian, so smooth and so cool. But I mean, if you look at this picture of Brian, this is what Brian looked like back then in high school. Brian clearly was into The Cure, Depeche Mode. He was just a chill guy who wasn't into that scene. I was very, very much on that path. And Brian says, yeah, man, I'll take him shopping. So we go to pick up Rudy at the resort. Adrian, the guitar player, backs out. And as an adult now, I realize he probably had a conversation with Rudy where he said, so who's taking you to the mall? And he goes, oh, I met this cool teenager and he's going to pick us up from the resort and we're going to leave. And he goes, I'm cool. Rudy gets in a car with two teenagers and we drive to his boutique shop. And and I said to him, dude, if you want, we can go to the mall. And he goes, oh, we're not going to a mall. We're going to have problems if we go to a mall. And I wanted problems. I wanted those problems. I wanted the problems of a mob. I wanted to experience Beatlemania with me and Brian having to run one of the guys in Whitesnake through the mall and out with security and get chased by a mob of people into Brian's little car and speed off 5 miles an hour in that car. But Rudy didn't want to go to that mall. He wanted to go to this boutique shop. We go to the boutique shop. They don't have what he's looking for. And the lady at the shop says, all right, what you need is to go to the Tucson Mall. There's 3 major department stores there, and they will have what you're looking for. And Rudy goes, all right. And he gets in the car with me and Brian, and we start heading to the mall. We get to the mall, and Rudy says, all right, guys, listen to me. He had instructions. We're going to walk, and we're going to walk fast. If anyone yells out my name or yells out Whitesnake, whatever, we're not turning around. And me and Brian go, yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Sarzo. Yes, we're going to do it. We get in the mall, start walking through the mall, and people started recognizing him in the mall. We had a genuine pop culture moment with one of the guys in Whitesnake walking through the Tucson Mall. And we get, I don't remember I don't remember what he bought, if he bought anything, but we get out through the mall and we bring him back to the resort. And then he says, do you guys want to go to the concert? And he gets us tickets and backstage passes, and we hang out at the concert. Here's the crazy part. 15 years later, I am now a stand-up comedian. I'm working on the Howard Stern show. I'm starting to get on TV. I don't know if I had done anything yet, but I feel like I had just started to do King of Queens, Sex and the City. And I'm backstage at a concert in Los Angeles at the Forum. And they have this room called the Forum Room where all these celebrities hang out at. I get a tap on the shoulder. I turn around. It's Rudy Sarzo and his wife, Rebecca. And Rudy says, hey, Craig. My name's Rudy. This is my wife, Rebecca. I'm a musician. We just wanted to say that we're both huge fans of yours. And we listen to you all the time on the Howard Stern show. And I went, Rudy, you're not going to believe this, but do you remember a 15-year-old kid taking you shopping in Tucson, Arizona when you were in Whitesnake? And he went, for comforters and sheets? And I went, for comforters and sheets? And he went, Craig, I'm so proud of you. And I went, couldn't believe it. Joining me right now is that other kid who took me to the mall because I didn't have a car or a license. I wouldn't even get a license for another 15 years. And then I wouldn't get a car for 20 more years. I was so pathetically broke. Brian Howard on the call. Brian, what do you remember from that day?
Well, the way you tell it, Craig, is about how I remember it. There's a couple things. I remember that a few times we went to concerts because you needed a ride to those concerts. And they were usually concerts that I felt like, I don't know if that's my jam, but I like going to concerts. I like hanging out with Craig. So I've oftentimes thought, is that story really true? I don't think anybody will believe me. But what I remember is you and I hopping in my 1970-something Toyota Starlet. I mean, that's literally what it was. It was like...
That's what we took a rock star to the mall in, is a Starlet?
It was a two-door Toyota Starlet with Rudy Sarzo in the back seat. What's funny is I remember you didn't even let him sit in the front seat. I don't think. I mean, I'm not sure.
I remember him being in the back seat. Because remember we had a weird moment at Oracle in Orange Grove where we just barely made the light and Rudy got really scared and goes, hey, guys, let's take it. And I thought, oh, man, we're going to hurt one of the guys in Whitesnake.
That's because you didn't drive and I'd had a license for 3 months now. So but I remember walking by Warehouse Records at the Tucson Mall. If I'm remembering this right, it's been a day or two, right? But I remember looking up and seeing Whitesnake posters on the wall as we walked by the Warehouse store.
Yes.
And I do remember 10 or 15 people beginning to follow us and just thinking, what a surreal, frigging crazy experience.
Yeah. And that concert, did it change how you felt about Whitesnake going to the concert?
I loved it. I mean, I think Craig and I probably went to 5 or 6, 7 concerts in high school. And I loved it. Totally changed how I thought about music like that. And it was a great experience, man. In fact, I've followed Rudy Sarzo's career over the years and just watched him ever since that moment.
What do you remember about Rudy and his personality?
I remember, I feel like I remember that he was from Brazil. I feel like I remember that.
Cuba.
From Cuba, okay. Mm-hmm. And then I also remember that he was really gentle, like sweet, kind-hearted, super awesome guy. And I do vaguely remember sort of running a red light and him saying, what are you doing? You know? So, but I remember that, man. I remember it, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I have that moment 15 years later with him. And then I think it was another 10 years later. I'm in this small town, Richland, Washington. It's part of the Tri-Cities. And oh, hey, look who's here. Joining us right now, ladies and gentlemen, Rudy Sarzo.
Oh my God. Insanity.
Rudy, say hello to Brian. Brian, say hello to Rudy.
You know what? Shortly after we met, I got in the mail a photo of you running that red light. I just paid the ticket.
Yeah.
Hey, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Your kindness continues on.
Rudy, I have so many questions. And the first is, why are you, as a rock star, one of the biggest rock bands in the world, why are you getting in a car with two teenagers, one of which you just met, and leave with them, trusting that they're going to take you where you need to go to leave a nice resort?
You guys were the first Uber I ever took.
Yeah. You are such a trusting person. It's crazy to me how nice you were to me, because I look back at that time. What do you remember about going to the mall that day? Do you have any memories of that, of getting in the car with the kids? And
yeah, it was very simple. My wife had a request of like, oh, you're going to be in the Southwest, area of the United States. Can you? And she was very specific. I want a Southwestern bedding set, which means the blanket. Mm-hmm. And the pillows matching, everything matching, and they had to have a certain design. And my relationship with my wife, we've been married for over 40 years now, and it's like me trying to impress her every day. It's like that's my goal. How am I going to impress my wife? And so you guys came to the rescue.
Wow.
You took me to the malls and I checked things out. We still have the bedding set.
Do you really? That's
one
amazing.
Of the rooms. Yeah.
Rudy, you and Brian also have something else that ties you guys in together. That's really incredible. But before I point that out, I wanted to ask you, the first band that really put me on the path, and I feel like they don't get enough credit. Quiet Riot was the first rock band first heavy metal hard rock band to make it to number one on the album charts. And they are the band that opened the door for everyone that came through that door to success on MTV. And then it just became ruled by Motley Crue and Rat and Whitesnake and everything that came afterwards. Do you know at the time, as I've had friends who've had huge success, and they always describe they don't realize how big it's getting, that it doesn't hit them. And I know you had already toured with Ozzy before you got into Quiet Riot again. Do you know that it's getting huge? Like, is there a moment that you remember thinking, oh, wow, I guess we're actually a huge band now?
That is a really great question. I mean, that's a multi-layer answer. And so just to be specific, to answer just that one question, was I aware of it? Yes, I was aware of it, not during the making of the record or even the first month of the band being on the road. I became aware of it once we started climbing the mountain, because you spent a lot of time at the base of the mountain, getting things together and having bands actually waiting for your album to chart, and then having the agency be able to sell you as a band to go on tour with other bands, because as a support act is exactly the word. You're there to support ticket sales for any band. Like if you see a band that does not have an opening band, they don't need support.
Right.
Support band, and by that usually means that you have such a catalog of music that you really don't want to have a band come in and play for like 40 minutes before you, and then the set change and all that. That takes about an hour sometimes. And then that doesn't leave a whole lot of time for that show, for your own performance. If you got like 2 hours, let's say you're AC/DC, and you got a 2.5 hour show because you have that many songs to play. I haven't been to an AC/DC show since Quiet Riot opened up for AC/DC at the Tacoma Dome, where Tom was. I don't think at the time he was, but that's the place where Tom,
Tom,
your old man,
Tom Alexander, another mutual friend.
Alexander, yeah. That before he moved down to Anaheim, and we just did a show with him this year in Anaheim at the Honda
at
the Honda Center, yeah. And but anyways, going back to that, I don't think that at this point, 40 years later, AC/DC has a support band. They might, but I'd be really surprised.
Yeah, they don't need it. When you bring up being a support act, Quiet Riot came to Tucson, Arizona to open for Black Sabbath. And at that time, Quiet Riot's album had just hit #1, first heavy metal band to hit #1, and the single had gotten to #6. And this galvanized everyone my age. I remember listening to those lyrics and thinking, there was a line in there, I got no brains. I'm insane. My teacher says that I'm one big pain. And I thought, I don't have any brains. I think I'm insane. And all my teachers hate me. And I thought, man, it just spoke to me. I got the boys. We will bring the noise. I didn't have any friends, but I like the noise. But you guys were so massive that you guys do your show. It's pandemonium in the arena. And people don't believe this when I say this to them. When Black Sabbath got on stage, it was about 5-6 songs into their set. I saw people leaving in droves out of the arena because they had just come to see Quiet Riot and they were walking out during Black Sabbath. That's how massive it was. And when you're touring around the country and things are getting bigger and bigger, I mean, yes, you're being brought in as a support act, but is there any indication in that bubble that, oh, this is actually going to change my life? Or,
I never let success change my life. I adapt my life according to my relationship with my wife. We're a couple. We're married. We started, being together in 1981, about 3 years before we got married. So she's been with me through everything, and it's me learning about how I can be a better husband, a better human being, all of that. So I do. That's my focus in life, or spiritually, how can I be more, my relationship with God? That's me. I'm not trying to preach, but since you asked the question, what I focus on, I really don't focus on success, because going back to your original question, I don't think there's a formula, but there is a path for any successful journey to go through. So let's say, as somebody who hitched the ride on the Crazy Train with Ozzy in 1981, thanks to Randy Rhoads recommended me when they were looking for a bass player, I got to experience it. So I saw it. It's kind of like, again, going back to the mountain. You start here at the bottom, and as you go up the hill, the mountain, the landscape changes. At the bottom of the mountain, you're gonna have more lush. You're gonna have more trees. Then it gets a little icier and rockier as you get to the top, and then there's that peak, and that's it. There's only room for one. I'm pretty sure you've seen photos of people climbing up mountains like Kilimanjaro, whatever. It's a line of people waiting to get to the top.
Right.
And then you finally get to the top, you take that photo, you sometimes they put a flag or something, which means that the next person behind you is going to take the flag and chuck it down the mountain and put their own. But it's that moment that you say, you reached the peak, right? Okay, so it's again, it's the journey going up there. So I saw that with Ozzy, uh, and Ozzy has been one of those artists that even after Randy's death, he had to take that climb down again because now we had a major loss.
Right.
And how are you going to recuperate from that? Not only because how are you going to find somebody like Randy, or how are you going to deal with the emotional void that you have now in your life? Because it's not just about this guy playing guitar in your band. It's about you just lost a family member. So he had to start all over again with that. I had to start all over again uh, when I went back with Quiet Riot. When I was when I was in the band with Randy and Ozzy, if you look at the band, it's two guys from Quiet Riot, one guy from Black Sabbath in the middle, and one guy from Black Oak, Arkansas, playing drums.
Right.
So the two guys who had just been rejected a few months earlier, especially Randy, who got to compose those two legendary records, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. And then he goes on tour with Ozzy, and I come along for that. It's how do you replace that? Where do you start? So for me, once I lost Randy, which was my only reference to my personal musical journey, and I just want to explain this. When I joined the band, Ozzy Osbourne, Ozzy had been at least 16 years prior to it with Black Sabbath.
Yep.
So he had a legacy. He was there from building and the guys being in the van, driving yourself around, playing shitty gigs and all of that to become Black Sabbath. Right. Tommy Aldridge did the same thing with Black Oak, Arkansas. And then with Pat Travers. Right. I went from sleeping on the floor in Kevin DuBro's apartment to joining Ozzy Osbourne band, and they were already 2 records done. I wasn't part of that building process at all. And I needed to do that. I really did. But as long as Randy was there with me, sharing that journey of us being members of Ozzy, I felt like I really had a partner, had somebody going in that journey with me. But I lost Randy, and I just lost my compass completely. I didn't even know what road I was on anymore, except that I knew that I had to get on the right track. And so this is September of 82, and I get a phone call from Kevin DuBro, and he says, "Hey, Roots, we're in the studio. There's a possible record deal. How would you like to come down and play on Thunderbird?" Which is the song that I used to play with him in DuBro. About 8 months before I joined Ozzy, I moved in with Kevin, and I was sleeping on the floor of his spare bedroom until I got the phone call to audition with Ozzy. Once I passed the audition that day, I started living with Ozzy and Sharon up in the big house, in the mansion. No, they were incredibly kind and generous from day one.
Rudy, I have to point something out to you. That you had mentioned something about a topic that I really want to get into with you. And I know I have a limited time with you. And I have to tell you that looking back on this incredible moment that I had as a fan with my friend Brian taking you to the mall, I think about the two of you often because as I've come to know you as a friend, you've mentioned that word spirituality, and you've pointed out to me a few times, you've alluded to having a strong faith to me. And I've always wanted to talk to you about that. And the really fascinating thing is Brian, who drove us to the mall that day, became a pastor.
Oh, wow.
And he runs an organization. Brian, how did you end up on this path?
Well, that's a great question. I grew up in a Christian family, and so I grew up with faith in my background. And, like many of us in high school and our teenage years, we make some squirrely decisions and try some things out. But ultimately, after high school, I ended up going to a Christian college, going into church work, and then ultimately now running an organization that's active in 53 countries that essentially starts churches to really help people thrive in their faith. So it was a continuation. It was a process that, continuation of my childhood. But now I've been married 30 years and I've given 30 years of my life to this kind of work.
30 years for Brian. Rudy married 40 years. Two guys who have married, long-term marriages, have made it work and have strong faith. Rudy, is there a moment in your life that put you on that path of spirituality, or was it always in the house? Was it part of your upbringing?
That's a really great question. And I wrote about it in my book because, when people read the motivation for me to write the book was to tell this, answer the number one question I get asked when I travel around the world, which is, what was it like to play with Randy Rhoads? And and what would happen is I would be traveling and running to a fan at the lobby of a hotel somewhere. I'm on my way to sound check. He asked me that question. I give him the 5-minute answer. And I always walked away feeling like it's not enough. I haven't said enough about what was it like. And so I said, you know what? Oh, yeah. And at that time that I started writing the book back in early 2000, there was a lot of innuendos, conspiracy theories surrounding Randy's death.
Oh,
and I said, what? If I don't tell what actually happened, these conspiracies will actually become truth.
What were the conspiracies that were starting to come out?
Well, they got really ugly because the deeper, like somebody would say something, conspiracy theory, and then, of course, it's MySpace. We're talking about early on. The next person had to up that. And the other one had to up that. Sure. So it got to a point that they were blaming that it was planned, according to their conspiracy, that the Osborne planned on killing him. And I'm going like, stop. That that's it. Here's what happened. So I wrote the book. Okay. And in the book I wrote, it was very important for me to actually open up and just tell it like it was. And the section, it's at the end of chapter 2. And I just mentioned it once. I mentioned about my, when I say agreement, it's one-sided. It's me talking to God. And I had just finished reading the Bible, and I've had some certain experiences, visions, but I was sleeping on the floor in Kevin DuBro's spare bedroom, and on a sheet. I can tell you exactly what it was. It was a Flash Gordon sheet, like children's sheet. I'll never forget it. And it was shag carpeting. When I say on the floor, no mattress, no bed spring, nothing. It's just the floor. But my faith was stronger than ever. I could move mountains with it. And I think something manifested from it. I know this, who I am today manifested itself from my faith. And it was actually, I wasn't asking for anything. All I was asking for is I surrendered. I gave up control of what I thought I should be doing and accomplishing. And my conversation with God was that as long as my fingers kept moving, I was going to keep playing. But if I never made it, by making it, being able to afford more than top ramen, for dinner, you know what I mean? For me to have to be able to work as a professional musician, then have a little apartment somewhere when I'll be off the road and have a home, make a home for myself.
And that's your conversation with God is saying, please, this is what I want. Do with me as you will. My goal is simply this. And then go ahead. Were you going to?
Yeah. And then, but I said, if I never make it, that's fine. My relationship with God is more important to me than anything else. Immediately after I released that, there's a sense of peace. There's a sense of faith, hope. Everything's going to be okay. And I'm sleeping on the floor. Within a couple of days, I get the phone call to join Ozzy. Okay. I would have not all the experience I had with Ozzy. If I would have not had that, as my foundation, I would have never survived it the way that I did.
Now, here's the interesting thing about this, and I don't know if I've seen anyone ask you this question. You have this strong faith. I've heard you talk about having this conversation with God.
Mhm.
How does your family respond when you end up with the devil, according to people who saw the imagery? This is before Ozzy now is seen, he's humanized. Back then, his image was a scary image, an evil looking image. What are you hearing from your family of, Rudy, what are you doing? You have to be having those kind of conversations with people.
That is the perception that people outside.
Sure.
I mean,
But you had to deal with it, right? With your family?
Yeah. But they got to know Ozzy. Right? As soon as you met Ozzy, you know that there's nothing wrong with this guy. I mean, as far as being evil, satanic, or anything like that,
right?
I mean, we'll have something that we got to deal with. You want to say there's nothing wrong? I mean, there's nothing evil about him,
right?
Okay, just want to be clear,
right?
Including myself, nobody's a saint,
right?
And and he's very lovable, he's very funny. So my whole family met him. Now, as far as the image goes, when we used to get awards for the record, and there's been a dispute on the internet about why am I holding a Blizzard of Oz, platinum or gold record in a picture. And it's very simple. If for the people that usually the people that complain about that, they know nothing about the music industry. They're not in it. They're not aware. They don't have a gold record that they can go and look at it and say, oh, this is given us as a thank you for the contribution. You could be a dentist. You could be a lawyer. You could be a manager. You don't have to have played on the record to get a gold record. This
right.
is giving,
right. Of course.
Yeah. So me being on the touring band, Tommy got the same one. He didn't play on the record.
Oh,
wow. It wasn't like I was trying to fool anybody. Say, hey, look, I played on the record. No, I just, no, I'm on tour now with these guys, and I'm contributing to, I'm getting up on stage, I'm playing with them, and I got this. And this came from the bottom of Sharon and Ozzy. They wanted me to have this. And to be honest with you, because the complaint is always having to do with Bob Daisley, right? Bob Daisley came back to the band after I left. And he kept writing and touring on and off, but writing on every single album and playing on the records up until No More Tears. So,
oh wow,
I was given those records in 1981, 82. And No More Tears is around 87, 88, around that time. I'm pretty sure he had 5 years being in the band to resolve that issue that he got his own record. Gold record, platinum record, whatever he played on that he deserves, of course, more than anybody else, more than me, because I didn't play on those records, but I'm pretty sure it was resolved by then,
I wanted to ask both of you guys, as people who have faith, I feel like I'm in recovery. I've been sober now for over 19 and a half years.
Wow,
and
congratulations.
And there are people that will clearly be going through something themselves, and they'll say, just out of curiosity, and you know what they're looking for. They're looking for answers for themselves. And I want to ask Brian first, when people ask you, hey, just out of curiosity, and they're searching themselves, what do you say to someone who has no faith at all? What do you tell somebody who's looking for an answer to something, Brian?
Well, what I would say to that person is you're not here by accident. You were created to know God. And so when I hear Rudy's story about having an encounter with God, I would say you were created to know God and be in a relationship with God. So find a person who has strong faith or a church near you and go connect so you can learn more about that, so you can be in right relationship with God.
Rudy, do you ever have people ask you about your faith, and do you have an answer for them when they say, How does that work for you, or they're clearly asking for looking for something? Do you have an answer for them?
Yeah, speaking from experience, my answer would be, I mean, nobody could ever talk me into having the faith that I have. This is an inward, it's a self-realization of your relationship. Where do you belong in this reality that we are experiencing mutually? And I mean, look, during COVID, I went down the rabbit hole because I was seeking for the healing qualities of music. And I wound up, from like Tesla, Fibonacci, and the golden ratio all the way down to quantum physics, the divine field, the quantum field, and all of that. And, it's all about sound and particles, waves and particles. And it seemed like the more I learned about that, of course, it validates the existence of a higher power, whatever, some people call it, like in AA, just like you. I mean, I'm going to be 27 years sober, and I've been a member of AA since COVID, now for 4 or 5 years. And it was interesting, the experience that I had joining AA, because from the time that I joined Ozzy, every time there was that we reach a new level of success, there will be a celebration.
Mm-hmm.
And here comes the champagne or the whatever. And I'm thinking, this alcohol that had nothing to do with the creation of these records, because you can't create a masterpiece if you're drunk and passed out in the studio. You were sober when you created this, so how does this equate one to the other? But
right.
But it became a lifestyle. It was like, okay, you sold so many records, let's get drunk. You did this, you sold so many tickets at Madison Square Garden, let's get drunk. It just kept moving through my life. And then, just like any generation of music, it ended because something else came in.
Sure.
The 60s put an end to the 50s generation of music.
Mm-hmm.
Very few made it through that. The 70s did the same thing to the 60s, or it imploded when the Beatles just gave it up and it went into something else. The Stones carried on, but it was not the same Stones
mm-hmm.
in the 70s as they were in the 60s. It was a whole different vibe going on. And then the 80s did the same thing with the 70s. And then, of course, you're going to have the 90s do the same thing with the 80s.
Sure.
And not only do you have musical shifts, but you have social, cultural shifts going on that contribute to the end of a generation. Ours happened to be AIDS in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Our biggest marketing tool, MTV, declined putting videos on rotation that contain sexual content, because they would do PSAs about abstain from sex to the kids, and then followed by Tony Katane doing backflips on a Jaguar. It didn't make any sense. It's like, you know what I mean? So it's like, so bands like Whitesnake, remember the last batch of videos that we did, they asked not to have Tony or any female on the video.
Wait, MTV asked that?
Yep.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we went, in 1980, actually in 82, I did with Ozzy that Speak of the Devil Live at Irvine show.
Yep.
That was aired. Actually, we filmed it it aired Halloween of 1982.
Okay.
But it was filmed it was the last show in continental US that we did in June. And we flew to Hawaii from there, and then Ozzy got married, and then we continued on with the Japanese tour, and then we did a couple more shows, and then we did Speak of the Devil, the Black Sabbath re-recordings, and that was the last time that I played with Ozzy. That was in September. So by October, we were the first production of a full-length performance show.
Concert video.
Concert.
Yeah.
Exactly, live. So I already had that bit of a history with MTV, but then a few months later, I'm out there with Quiet Riot. It was actually literally a few months later. I need to go back to the story of me playing on Thunderbird.
Oh, that's right.
Because that's how I got back in the band. I know it's just like this labyrinth.
I know, and I also I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I know I'm starting to run out of time with you guys, and there is a couple of quick questions I wanted to get to both of you. All this time thinking of you having spirituality at a time when that genre of music was so decadent and so full of temptation and glorifying temptation. I wanted to ask each of you, and I don't even know if this is a fair question, but have you ever had one singular moment of knowing that God is real? There is no question. This is a God shot I'm having right now. And I'm going to ask you first, Brian. Is there any one singular moment that you could say to somebody who doesn't have a faith to say, look, all I can tell you is this happened, and how can you explain that? Do you have a moment like that, Brian, that you can say, that you can share?
I don't know that I can look back on one specific moment and say this is the moment where I can just say God is real. I think it's a cumulative effect of me experiencing people in my life and looking around at creation and experiencing people that have been impacted by God and reading the Bible. I think it's cumulative of all of those things together rather than one, and believing that this is true rather than sort of a light bulb moment.
Rudy, do you have a singular moment?
Yeah,
that you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, that moment that I surrendered, I surrender control. I mean, how can I surrender something to something that I don't believe it exists? Of course, it existed. That's why I made that like I call it's not really an agreement. It's a promise, basically. I promise that as long as my fingers keep moving, I'm just going to keep trying, and that my relationship with God was more important than anything else in my life. At the moment that I was sleeping on the floor, and I think that I had to get down to the basics of the human experience. No materialism, all spirituality. I had nothing material, but see what happens is you only got so much room within you. So if you start filling it with material stuff, there's no room for the spiritual. But if you empty it materially, completely, it's all spirituality. It's all your belief and your connection with God.
And in your time traveling around the world, Rudy, with having these people in your life like Ozzy and Kevin and Sam Kinison, are they ever trying to get you to cross over a line that you don't want to go past?
That's interesting about Sam, and I'm pinpointing on Sam because I could always relate with him about his pastor side of him,
his background, growing up in a traveling ministry.
Yeah, I could always relate to that with him. So I did not see him as this out of control individual, which he had become. I always saw him as potentially sooner or later he's going to find himself again, because I have been there. One of the things that I wanted to just encapsulate is that when I was talking about that success and drinking became synonymous, it wasn't until I joined AA that I realized that I was an alcoholic. I have been sober for like 20 something years, but I did not realize that I was an alcoholic because I had never been to AA. I just quit drinking. Once I realized I was an alcoholic, everything just started making sense, because I've made so many alcoholic decisions in my life, career-wise, that by the grace of God, they were corrected when I made the mistake, and I was able to carry on, on the path that I've been. But that just gave me the whole like, whoa! It was beyond a wake-up call. It was like a slap in the face. It was like, it's like, you are an alcoholic. Stop acting and thinking like one.
Ooh,
And
that's a heavy one.
now I just changed completely. Now, I used to like shoot from the hip and give you, if you ask me to do something, I will answer it right away, give you a yes or a no, or I can't. Or now it's like, let me meditate on that, meaning let me think about it.
Hmm.
And the next day, the answer will be revealed, usually in the morning when I wake up. I wouldn't even think about it. I wouldn't even stew on it. It's just like the answer will come. And and the answer is like deep. It's like I wake up and I have all this information as to why I should or should not do something. I say, okay.
You have a story, Rudy, about after Randy passed. I guess the area that you guys were in where the plane crash happened, where Randy passed, was a really remote area. So you guys were kind of stuck for a while.
Yeah, we were.
In a remote area. But you found your way to a church that day?
No. What it was is after we were there for about 4 hours, with the house burning down from the crash, and it took about 3 hours for the fire department and the police department to show up, and oh yeah, I mean
3 hours to a burning house.
Yeah, it's 1982.
Oh, wow.
It's in a neighborhood where there's a landing strip between homes. There's like one row of homes, a landing strip. Then beyond that, on the other side, another row of homes. So people park their planes. I think that's the neighborhood where John Travolta, I don't know if he still lives there. He can park his 747.
Right.
But yeah, there was and no cell phones. It wasn't like we've put out the iPhone, a fire department, can you come over? No, nothing. It's 1982. We had no way to communicate. Plus, we were all in shock, instant shock. Yeah, we were not thinking straight. So yeah, it took that long. But what happened was 4 hours later, we were taken by we have no transportation. It's not like you have Uber coming to pick you up.
Right.
The cops took us to a nearby hotel so we could spend the night and then make arrangements to fly to LA the following day. And so I'm in my room and I'm going like, the voices in my head are like yelling at me, and I said, I got to get out of here. And so I'm walking down the road and I see a church and I go and I go inside just to find some solace, and I got my head down. I'm in the last pew. I mean, as you entered the first one, and I'm just sitting there, I'm thinking and trying to quiet down the voices in my head. And I hear somebody in the front moaning and in total agony. And I'm just like, I'm too deep into what I'm doing. And I eventually lift my head up, and it was Ozzy in the first row.
Oh, man.
He was like screaming in total pain, and I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna leave him. Let him get this out of his. You never really get it out of your system. It's just kind of like it's there. It's kind of like a wound and try to heal it, but it's always there,
I really admire. I've been in and out in my life with wondering how I feel about faith, about spirituality, and I've been all over the place with it. And both of you guys, I've really admired the path that you guys have been on. So I was really looking forward to having the two of you on here to have a conversation about it. And heading down the home stretch, I just have to go back to Rudy being so nice that I wonder, is Rebecca the balance when you're out in public and you're so easy to get along with? Does Rebecca lay down a little bit of, all right, Rudy, we got to go? Is she someone who can get you out of this? You just seem so willing to have, everybody has the same story about Rudy. He's the nicest guy. He's the nicest guy. Always makes time for people. And it seems to be a tough thing to do when you have places you got to be. And does Rebecca, is she the yang to your yin at any point to go, all right, Rudy, we got to go? Or is she?
Yeah, the best way I can explain it is it takes two to fly a kite, and she
Hmm.
has never let go of my string.
Hmm. Brian, both of you guys have been in long marriages. You said 30 years now, Brian?
30 years and 4 grown kids. Yep.
Wow. What is the secret to a healthy and long relationship?
Man, what a long, feels like such a great question. I'll hone in on like 2 quick things. First of all, I think serving each other and being committed to the other's best interest and not only thinking of yourself is a huge part of a successful marriage. I think another thing is long-term commitment and just saying I'm going to stay in this thing even when it's tough. And I'll say from the beginning, it's really helpful when you have a common belief system because that carries you through a lot of those difficult times. But we've just passed 30 years and really blessed to have experienced 30 years like that.
Rudy, I'm sure you've been asked about this as well. What is the secret to a healthy and long relationship?
Okay. I mean, it's a multi-layered question.
Sure.
So I know that we're running out of time, but this might be something that might help people because it helped me when I read about it in a book. Men, if your relationship with, man to man, your buddies, your bandmates, teammates, whatever, will challenge you. It's a challenging relationship. I always like to play with people who are going to challenge me musically. And when I did sports in high school, the same thing, And women will test you. Traditionally, the way that I was brought up, it was like my mom. My mom, when I was a little kid, would always test me. She was like, test me about what I was learning in school and things like that. Okay, your teachers in school, traditionally with me, they were all female. Your first girlfriend is going to test you for like, do you love me? Well, show me. What are you going to do to show me you love me? And then you're married and you're being tested completely because, or in a typical relationship, the woman really, she relies on the husband to provide certain things, and if you look at the laws of the jungle, if you see two tigers fighting over one tigress, whatever you call it, the female tiger, it's the one that wins that walks away.
Right.
So it is that, and once I wrap my head around that, I say, okay, I get it now. Because my problem used to be, why isn't she more like me? It's because she's not supposed to.
Right.
It's 2 different things.
So
it's the yin and the yang. That's what it is.
Communication is a big part of it.
Oh my God, communication. Yes, always let her know. I always let her know how I feel because I might be feeling certain emotions and she might think, oh, it's because of me. Because, it's vibrations, energy,
Sure.
That you vibrate. And she'll know exactly that what's wrong. So before she even asks me what's wrong, I let her know what's wrong. That way she doesn't take it personally, and also understanding her needs. We have we are after 40 years, we are, and I believe in the best place with our relationship.
That's wonderful. Love it.
We've given each other a lot of room because, okay, she's known me since I was playing with Ozzy, since 1981. And typically for any of any couple, that if the husband travels a lot or the wife, the other one stays at home. Once they're the husband or the wife stays at home, they have a certain lifestyle, just like I do when I go on the road. I get on a plane, I go to the hotel, I get myself ready for the show, and I do certain things. And sometimes, I used to come back home and expect that. Meanwhile, while I was away, my wife was staying up at 2:00 or 3:00 in the morning watching 90 Day Fiancé.
Yeah,
and
who wouldn't?
And I would come. Yeah, I mean,
it's a great show.
But for me, I can't do that anymore. I can't go to sleep with a TV on and people going, "Bah, bah, 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 bah." It's just, no, I can't, because in the hotel room, I have control of everything.
Of
I
course.
turn the lights off. It's silent. I, I go into a whole different emotion right before I go to sleep. I go into gratitude, not listening to people bickering and yelling at each other. It's all about my thank you. It's like a prayer. I say a prayer every night, and
You
I put myself in tune. And then I get up in the morning and I do the same thing before I get out of bed. I prepare myself with gratitude. If there's people yelling at each other on the TV, I can't do
Rudy,
that.
you are tapping into something that I find so fascinating about you, which is that we all have our own things we need to keep us happy. We have our own things that we have to do to move forward in life. I used to be jealous of guys like you because you travel with so many people, and comedians, we travel by ourselves. And it looked like so much more fun traveling with a bunch of guys. And then I did it. I did a tour, a House of Blues run with a bunch of comedians from the Howard Stern show. And that was worse than being by myself, because you realize everybody has their own individual things there. And the biggest problem that I found, everyone has their own individual levels of communication skills. And it doesn't match up. And the patience you had to learn to travel with some of the more well-known personalities that were known for speaking their mind, shooting from the hip, and saying whatever they feel. It's mind-blowing to me that you had the patience to deal with so many well-known temperamental personalities. And did any of them ever test your patience?
Yes, because they could not shake it. They would not shake my keeping it together. So they took it as a challenge. Okay, I'm going to break this guy down. No, it ain't going to happen.
Well, before we head out to the end and we get to whatever you guys would like to say on your way out, and wherever you want to direct people to, whatever you want to tell people about, is there a moment, Rudy, where that maybe you wish you could take back, where you did lose your patience with someone? Is there any one moment that stands out where you go,
wow,
oh God, if I ever see that person again?
No, it's not. It has nothing to do with individuals. It happens to do with the place that I went to when that happened. It happened to me in childhood.
Oh, wow.
My family had just arrived from Cuba. We were in Miami, and we went from like middle class. We were spoiled, my little brother and me, by my relatives, my uncles and aunts that will always come and give us little toys. They didn't have to be expensive. There just be that attention, And then all of a sudden we were removed from that. They were not there anymore. It was just my mom and dad struggling, trying to figure out what are we going to do. We're in this foreign country. My dad didn't have a job yet, and all this stuff was going on. So I got a little bit disconnected from them, because I felt, even at almost 11 years of age, that they needed to sort things out. So I asked my mom for a dime to go to a 7-Eleven. They had 7-Elevens back then in Miami. And I got a kite, just a kite with a string. And I went to the park across the street. There was a school, a junior high, and they had the school park.
Okay.
And then I was flying it with my little brother. He was 6 years old.
I have a feeling this isn't going to turn out well.
This little gang shows up, maybe 10, 12 kids, and they started throwing rocks at the kite.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that was my only toy that I had at that moment. That was it, And I'm crying, I'm freaking out, and all of a sudden they shove one of them in front of me to fight me. I just lost my shit. I started swinging, and just like it wasn't me. it was like this
survival. It's survival.
Survival. Yeah.
You need to survive. You just
Yeah. But I had no connection with any spirituality at that moment.
Oh boy.
It was all the anger of being transplanted from a place that I knew to being in this situation, surrounded by these kind of people, and we were all. It took me years to realize that all of us kids were suffering from the same PTSD
of
being transplanted.
Of course,
because what would happen is not only you transplanted, and my family was very loving, but I know from the neighbors that we had where we were living at, they were all yelling and screaming at each other because they were all again in that same situation. Where am I gonna get a job? Because language was a huge barrier at that time. How am I gonna feed? How am I gonna come up with the rent? So they would start the family would start fighting, and then the kids would go out on the streets to get away from that. But then there was that anger that we were bringing outside from the inside in the apartment.
Yep.
Then we all start beating up on each other.
Yep.
And I got to tell you, when that happened, I beat the shit out of this kid. I could have killed him at that moment and not even realize it because I just lost myself. And at that moment, I lost my innocence. I was not a child anymore.
Wow.
And once I came to, when that kind of
rage,
that rage dissipated, and I was kind of like myself again, I tried so hard because it's like 1 minute you're innocent, you're a kid, you're a child playing with a kite. The next moment you're a monster. I could not get that child again back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, lost my innocence.
That I would not have thought you would go that far back to something. That is a profound experience. And I understand. Brian, we are going to have another conversation with just the two of us. But as we close out, is there anything you want to promote, direct people to? Is there anything else you want to leave us with?
Well, I'll say this. It was an honor to meet Rudy. Last time I saw you was 30-something years ago. When I was 16 or 17 years old, I met this crazy long-haired guy named Craig Gass. And I drove him around and we went to a bunch of concerts. And it was super fun. And so this has been a really invigorating conversation. I don't have anything to promote. I'll just say one thing. I mean, first of all, I'm encouraged by the whole conversation. And I'll just say, there's a Bible verse that says, whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and he rewards those who seek him. So like I think Rudy has said today, I think it's Hebrews 11:6. Like Rudy said today, pursue God. And I'm thankful to have hung out with you guys, and it's been an honor to be here today.
Agreed.
It's a pleasure, Brian. Rudy, I'm so proud of you. I knew you were destined for big things. I love that.
Thanks, Rudy.
I love that.
Rudy, anything you want to promote? Anything you want to direct people to?
Just, people ask me, so what am I doing besides Quiet Riot? I don't have time.
You guys are on the road a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
And when I'm not on the road, I also love being at home, with my family, and enjoying the fruits of my labor, And so, yeah, come out and see Quiet Riot whenever we happen to be in your town.
Rudy, over the years, I've met a lot of people who got to meet their heroes, and they don't always have a good story to tell. And sometimes it's so bad that it's comical, and I get a kick out of that too. But I really want to thank you again because I started to mention when you jumped on the call with Brian, I not only had this surreal moment of, with Brian's help, being able to take one of the biggest rock stars on the planet to go shopping, and then 15 years later, have that guy tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, I just wanted to say hello. I'm a big fan of yours. But 10 years after that, I'm in a small town in the Tri-Cities area of Washington State. And I had just gotten off doing a local radio appearance. And there was a Starbucks at a mall. And because it was still 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, the mall wasn't open yet. So it's an empty parking lot. And I see there's like one person sitting at a table in front of the Starbucks. And I start to walk into the Starbucks, and the guy at the table said, Craig? And I looked over and I said, Rudy? Rudy was in the Tri-Cities playing with Blue Oyster Cult that night. And then during the pandemic in 2020, I am driving cross country and I'm in the middle of Oregon State. And I mean the middle. There is nothing there except for a massive casino where I pulled over, and I see a marquee that says concerts are still happening at the casino, and Rudy's face is on the marquee. And I said, Rudy, are you in this town of Oregon? And he said, yeah, come on by. Let's hang out. So there's been moments over and over again where I've run into Rudy over the years, and it's been a little surreal. And I really, really love what you guys had to share with me today. Thank you guys for sharing your lives with me today. And I really just admire both of you so much. Thank you for your time. And I'll see you guys again soon.
God bless you. Thank you so much. It was fantastic.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Rudy.
Thank you.